All right, hey everyone, welcome back to more Flesh and Bad, and today we're going to be doing some post-ban Terra. We did have the recent Sage ban list, which gave us basically Rootbound back, and kind of shifted the meta in a very interesting way. So I think that we saw kind of in a recent kind of tournaments that actually KO is doing quite well. Let me see if I can actually pull up the graphic for that. Yeah, so this was actually the top 8 for the showdown in Toulouse. And we basically saw, I think, what is it, 5 KOs in the top 8. And I think a KO ended up winning the whole thing. I think it was like Xavier or something. But anyways, KO looking like it's in a very good spot. Looks like there definitely are some decks that can maybe try to contend with him. Like I think Kano is still pretty good. Maybe Vince and Naira are still kind of like creeping up there, but KO seems to be like the predominant kind of aggro deck now that Briar is effectively kind of dead after the bans, which is a little unfortunate. But yeah, I think if KO is the predominant deck, I think that Terra is actually still in a really good spot because I think that matchup was basically 50-50 pre-pen when we were teching for stuff like Briars and Kanos. But if we just need to tech for KO, like we're actually in a really good spot because there's a lot of KO tech that we can add. So the kind of ways that we can kind of tech for KO, and actually I should probably put Sledge in the sideboard, but I did just open a gold foil Sledge, so maybe we'll leave that up here for now. But basically, the way you kind of tech for KO with Terra is like you just want to up your 4 block density, up your kind of like big react density, and just kind of like keep kind of doing that grinding kind of like value play that you're doing. So we're upping the 4 blocks here to basically 8 4 blocks instead of 7, which is daring today. But I think we actually have a couple more interesting cards that we can also run. So I think in previous lists I wasn't running Renounce Grandeur, but if KO is one of the predominant meta threats, this card basically completely hoses KO in a lot of scenarios. Like hoses agility tokens, hoses might tokens. Like it's basically like a 3 for 9 if it's just hitting a might token, which is fantastic and can also just kind of ruin KO's turns. Another card is Summer's Fall. Now I've tested around with this and I think this card is fine. I think you can also maybe replace this with Humble. I think that's kind of reasonable. But we're going to try the Summer Swell today because maybe we're going to pair into a Florian or Enigma, and then maybe I'm going to look like a genius. But I think Florian and Enigma are actually not doing all that well if KO is kind of like the predominant deck. So I think like Summer Swell is like maybe not even necessary. Like maybe we just can't kind of disrespect the Enigma and the Florian matchup a ton and just kind of try to beat all the KOs, which is kind of like a similar thing we were doing with the Briar matchup, just trying to beat all the Briars in the room and not worry about anything else. Another huge, I guess, kind of win for this deck is that we lost DGA, or like DGA lost Steelblade Shunt, which was one of the kind of like more brutal cards against us. That being said, they still have like Felling Axe, so maybe the deck's not fully dead, but I think that deck is definitely reduced in power kind of a significant amount. I think the deck still potentially struggles with KO. I haven't asked my DGA experts, but I think it probably does a little bit more than it maybe used to. So I think Terra is actually looking to be in a really good spot. I'm also going to be trying out Root Bounds in the deck today. So Root Bounds is a very interesting card in Terra because it kind of like contradicts your game plan, but not really. So like Root Bounds, like you obviously want to be pitching your Earth cards in most scenarios, but incidentally, you're just going to get a lot of Earth cards in your graveyard just kind of over the course of the game. So whether that's Root Bounds, whether that's like Autumn's Touch or like Canopy Shelter, like you're eventually going to hit a point where you're going to just have enough cards for Root Bounds. And very often you can just play this for a 0-for-4, which is just fantastic. Like having a 0-for-4 Earth defense reaction in Terra is just a huge kind of upgrade for the deck. Even if it's just a 0-for-3, like 0-for-3 is already kind of on rate-ish for Sage D reacts, like if you're comparing it to like Dragon or something. This card's, I think, still really good. It just kind of gives you a little bit more synergy. Like you can pitch it if you happen to like kind of just have a hand where you just like need an extra might. So I think this card's actually really, really good right now in Terra, but maybe we can also like flex it. It kind of depends how the meta shapes up. And yeah, one thing we did lose from Terra is our Sirens of Safe Harbor, which I think was a card that was like kind of toxic for the game anyway, so maybe not like a huge loss. But a lot of other decks lost Sirens, so our deck's largely in the same spot, and we can also kind of replace it with Fine Dolls, which is arguably better in some scenarios. Having the 3 costs is actually kind of nice for Titan's Wisp purposes. Where is it? Titan's Wisp purposes. But losing the unconditional life gain is definitely like a pretty big deal, so we're only running 2 of these. But overall, I think the deck is still really looking like it's in a really good spot. Like we're basically doing kind of the same game plan as before because they didn't ban the yellow 4 blocks, which they're going to do eventually. But yeah, I fully expect these to not kind of last around again, but we have to kind of prove that the deck is strong enough to actually kind of get there. So anyways, this is kind of like a starting point for the deck. Again, the sideboard is largely the same as before. I did try to experiment with like actually cutting Titan's Fist and Steelblade Buckler, but I couldn't quite make that work. I may talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, overall, this is kind of just like a more not unhinged version of Terra. I might also post like a unhinged version where we're just running like mono Sledge because I opened my gold foil Sledge, which is very, very cool. But yeah, anyways, I think this deck's still really strong. I think it's still really well positioned, especially if you're just facing off against a lot of KOs. And I think a lot of people aren't really caring about Sage right now, which is fair. I think that the ProQuest season basically ended, but there are a lot of callings, a lot of showdowns, or I guess maybe some callings, maybe some showdowns. I actually don't know. I think it's mostly showdowns for Sage, right? I'm not sure when the next Sage calling is, or if there even is one, or if it's just like a Pro Tour thing. But Sage is looking to be like a predominant format, so it's still worth kind of taking a look at some of the better decks and just kind of like tweaking and refining some kind of old decks as well. So, anyways, let's go ahead and get into the games and see how the deck kind of ends up playing. We got a KO. So first or second we KO. I believe it's first because we want to try to deny them setting up like an arsenal turn one. I feel like the best way that KO normally converts is like 5-card hands. So go ahead and run our big reacts, and then maybe we can trim down on something like a Fyendals. They'll be a little bit lighter on blues, but we're gonna try to rely on our kind of updated kind of clash cards, or our kind of like higher density of clash cards. And then I think the rest looks good, so let's go ahead and give it a shot. Yeah, I was feeling pretty good about this matchup, pre like pre-bans and stuff. So I think the matchup is pretty much the same. But let's go ahead and give it a shot. So I think go ahead and just set up, give them some filtering here with the disable. Starting off with the fruits to just gain a little bit of life padding is always nice. But yeah, I basically just kind of want to put them on as many 4-card hands as I can possibly manage, because while this is not necessarily like a fatigue matchup, you can sometimes have fatigue as an out. I think you can also go second in the KO and just try to kind of go for like the race strat, but having them like set up with like an agility on turn one and then also like a 5-card hand seems pretty rough sometimes. So I'm going to try going first this time and see if it's a little bit better. This is actually kind of one of those matchups where I'm not sure which is better between first and second. Seems pretty close, at least. I think they're going to go for the wild ride here. So I think I'm looking to probably just block out this turn and just try to set up the Staunch in Arsenal. So I think the play is probably just going to be to block Aegis with this Renounce here, and then Root Bound, and then maybe try to throw the Clash of Arms in front of the next thing. Root Bound's a really interesting card. I've been trying to test it out. Baseline being a 0 for 3 react is like kind of already okay-ish, but you do get obviously some situations where you get like the full additional value, which is nice. Let's go ahead and just block with the Clash of Arms here, set up the Staunch, and then make them kind of convert, because they're not actually setting up a 5-card hand here, which is pretty valuable, I think. So go ahead and just pass back. I feel like KO really only gets super scary when they're setting up like 5-card hands, and you know, the more that they're not doing that and just sitting like kind of just like not 3 wide kind of turns, the kind of better I feel about this matchup. That being said, Beaten Tracker is still a very, very powerful card, so we do have to kind of do something here. All right, this is a non-Beaten Tracker's turn. We could actually be in pretty good shape here. Okay, so it looks like they're not going to go for it, which means that this does give us some breathing room to actually play the Renounce Granger, which I think is pretty good. Fortunately, due to the yellow items, it's not super useful on this hand, but it'll be useful later. So let's go ahead and just play our Red Staunch from Arsenal, and then try to Renounce on our turn just to kind of maybe send a little bit of disruption. Yeah, we've done a good job at least not taking a ton of damage, and now here they're going to try to set up probably one of their big turns. Fortunately, we still have a lot of armor to work with, so I'm not too scared just yet, but multiple back-to-back big turns can be definitely a bit scarier. Not pay that might. I've actually really liked, now that Briar is kind of gone, adding the Renounce Grangers just for KO, I think are pretty disruptive. Couldn't do a lot of other things, like pretty decent into, I guess, like Glory and Enigma, stuff like that, like forcing them to block, but like that's super impactful when you don't have Pummel. But I think it's probably maybe just the best kind of card right now, just because a lot of the top decks are making auras right now. Being a 3 block is pretty relevant. It seems like a nice card at the current moment. We'll see if the meta ends up changing a little bit more, which I probably expect it to, but for now it seems pretty good. Okay, it seems like they're also not keeping a 5 card hand here, which is excellent for us. Go ahead and just reset the Staunch in Arsenal. Okay, and I think we got a very good hand for next turn. So starting off the Buckwild, which will get pretty cleanly covered by the Staunch here. I'm gonna go just hit ahead and use it because I know some KOs are on like Wreck Havoc and stuff like that. So it's always safe to like clear your arsenal on like a go again attack. You should try to do that. That being said, we could end up getting punished if they don't have follow up here. I find that hard to believe, especially if they're keeping 2 cards here. It looks like they are going to rip the Savage Feast here, so maybe expecting a Beaten's Trackers. They could also not risk it, though, which I think there is maybe a pretty decent risk here. I think they have to choose before they see the card draw, right? Okay, so it looks like they're not going to choose, which makes a fair bit of sense. So we can go ahead and use our Find Alls or our budget Sirens of Safe Harbor, I guess, to kind of cover that up nice and cleanly. And then let's go ahead and send in the Titan's Fist. So I know one thing about recent KO lists, a lot of them are kind of do fatigue a lot faster than you would kind of expect. That's just kind of like a recent development I've kind of noticed. So this is their first true 5 card hand here. And then let's go ahead and give them, yeah, okay, just leaking a little bit of damage here. It's going to take like maybe 4, and then just try to block with these 2 on Future Chain Link. Want to be on the lookout for an opportunity to use Civic Steps here. We see 1 Savage Feast gone. I guess the question is, what is the likely... Oh, okay, they don't actually have Go Again off of this. So I guess the choice is a bit more clear. That being said, they could like Agile Wind Up into something. I guess we might as well just throw the Clash in front of this. There's not like a super compelling reason to hold on to it. They could go Wind Up, but I don't think they have any extra follow-up. Okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. So you ended up leaking a little bit of damage on that red Buckwild because I expected their turn to be a little bit better, but that's fine. Maybe a lesson in just trying to overblock early. But I think there are some punishes for that, like Strongest Survive or something. I guess Strongest Survive is not even a really big punish, so maybe we just ended up leaking 4 damage for no real reason. It looks like they're going to continue blocking, which is great for us. And we're doing pretty well, actually, on the fatigue front here. So I think we're going to try to play to that kind of as our win con. Which is interesting, because normally I feel like historically KO has not really super gone to fatigue. But let's go ahead and block like this. Get to set up a Might Pressure with our Hammer for 5. It's looking pretty good. You just want to pad the life total fruits here. It looks like we're up a little bit on life, definitely a lot on armor. And like probably about even on deck size right now. Right, that being said, I fully expect the Beaten Trackers to probably see some use here. Notably, they did discard a Savage Feast, which is probably one of the better kind of combo cards with the Beaten Trackers. So we don't want to block with Civic Steps here because there's very likely we're going to get punished. We do have quite a bit of Earth in Graveyard, so if we can snipe like an Agility token or a Might token, that's also pretty valuable. So I think I like just cashing in this block early and leaking a little bit of damage, so we'll go down to 12. Now we do have to pay attention to the Smash Instinct, so we don't want to go too low. That being said, wouldn't expect like a red Smash Instinct here. So I believe this is our opportunity for the Civic Steps because they should be wanting to hopefully claw after this. I think I like doing this, and then they cannot Strongest Survive me, so I believe it's also safe to block with the Thunderquake as well. So go ahead and give them the Quicken token because I believe there's no true punish for this. And if they want to try to basically not send through damage to hold on the Quicken token, I think that's also quite reasonable. All right, I'm going to go ahead and throw the Blade Beckoner in front of this just to pad our life total just a little bit further. Maybe let's see if they actually end up making like an agility token in a turn here, because the Summer's Fall will actually be pretty useful. I'm actually not too sold that you actually need the Summer's Fall in this matchup, but is kind of maybe good into like some of the other decks that I know are floating around. Like I know Dromai is getting a bit more popular. Florian, I don't think is like a real deck, but it's also getting pretty popular as well. So it's kind of interesting. Like I think Summer's Fall is maybe like the best of a bunch of bad cards, but it's kind of taking the humble slot. Like maybe this ends up just being humble if those decks aren't really real right now, which I think is maybe a fair assumption. It looks like we're doing pretty good, at least on the kind of fatigue front. The beaten trackers are definitely still a point of concern, I think. But we got our first Civics charge out of the way, which is great. So having that not be a liability later in the game is very, very good. We're keeping kind of the pressure on here by just putting them on these 4-card hands. So all their armor is gone. We still have, looks like, a decent bit to work with. And the Turn Timber here is a very good draw. It's kind of interesting. We actually haven't had a great gauntlets this game yet. I'm almost tempted to try to bank one of these between the Rootbound and the Turn Timber. I think the Turn Timber is probably highest value, so maybe we're going to try to play towards that. Then we're going to block 4 here, Leak 2, and then try to Rootbound. Whatever we do next, maybe it's like a Claw or just a random attack. Okay, looks like they're going to go for the Humble, which is fair. So I think I like here maybe just cashing the shield and then just kind of keeping up the pressure with the Titan's Fist. You do need a Titan's Fist a lot in this matchup, so something to kind of be aware of. And then let's go ahead and just decompose for a little bit of extra value. I think Rootbound's like interesting right now. I'm not like super sold on whether or not I'm going to keep it, but I think it's interesting. Like it's basically just Drag Down, which is a card that was already kind of maybe close to being played. But it's an Earth card. It synergizes with your Summer's Falls, which are maybe get a little bit better. Kind of really depends if Enigma's in the format, which I don't like. Kayo seems like he just kind of like consumes all in terms of like just meta representation right now. So I feel like just having a very strong KO game plan is probably like the most important thing. Our opponent's also not made super great use of their beaten trackers, which maybe explains kind of like the life total discrepancy here. But I think we basically have this game pretty close to being unlocked. They do have maybe like one next extra follow-up here. So, kind of interesting. I think we're just supposed to take 3. There's like a little bit of risk that they set up an arsenal, but I think holding open the Turn Timber makes a fair bit of sense. Okay, there's Pulping, which is what we held onto it for. So we should be sending in 7 next turn, stripping their hand, and then I imagine it's pretty hard for them to win. And Summer's Falls are actually like pretty efficient on rate. So let's go ahead and take out their Might token, because that represents basically like true value as opposed to like theoretical value in the Vigor token. Right, we'll get our last decompose. The one thing I will notice between like the Summer's Falls and the extra root bounds is that you do decompose a lot faster. So like maybe that also does free up space for some of the other kind of Earth cards, but don't know if they're super necessary, to be honest. So it looks like they're kind of stuck with a hand that didn't block super well, which is like another kind of potential way to win this matchup. So it looks like they're on Smash Instincts. Some of the better blues, like Bear Hug, I think is a pretty solid card. But yeah, that's kind of like the KO. Like, I don't think the KO matchup has really fundamentally changed all that much. Like, I think if you want to have like a really good KO board, like you can maybe just take these Summer's Falls and like kind of disrespect Florian Enigma, which is like maybe like a decent spot. Maybe like change these to humbles and then maybe just keep the root bounds around just because they're pretty decent. And Summer's Falls, I think maybe is like decent utility still as well. But that's at least my kind of like initial thoughts on the KO matchup. I don't think this matchup's really like changed all that much for the worse though, which is at least nice. And I think we were already like decently positioned into him anyways. So I think any deck that's like probably not favored in KO, but can at least contend with KO is probably in a pretty good spot right now. All right, but let's try to see if we can get in a few more games. Alright, so we got a Phi, so this matchup can be a little bit scary, but shouldn't be too bad, so let's go second. Bring in our small hammer, Oasis, and then what do I want to cut here? Oh, I think we're already at 40. Okay, perfect. Then we'll go ahead and just ship it as is. So this is another matchup like KO where they can have like a pretty big spike turn if you let them. But keeping them off the spike turn is probably the most important thing. I'm halfway tempted to actually, after that last KO game, maybe shift these Summers Falls to Humbles, which I think are also like semi-applicable in the Fi. I think it's maybe like pretty reasonable. Alright, this hand does not block super well, which is fine. Maybe looking to... Oh wow, starting with the Snatch. Huh. Interesting. Okay, looks like they're just leading off with the Snatch, so like, the thing I guess I'm supposed to be afraid of here is like maybe a Razor Reflex or something, which would be pretty spicy. I've not seen that out of Phi yet, but I think we do have the Oasis to try to soak that up if they do go for it. Looks like they're maybe just trying to fix a little bit of an awkward hand here, though. So we can go ahead and pad our life total just a little bit here, and we're starting off at a pretty good spot against Phi, I think. Them not being able to leak a ton of damage turn 0 is definitely very beneficial for us. And then I think we're just going to probably just ship the Renounce Granger here. Again, not super high value against Phi, but can stop like fealty tokens, which are definitely pretty good value. So looking to set up the Oasis IP with the Clash, and just try to block a bit next turn. Looks like they're maybe going to just throw the armor in front of this, which I think is fair. Okay, maybe not. Alright, so no fealty next turn is definitely a pretty big deal for us. That being said, they might not have any cards that generate fealty, but still kind of rules that out, I guess. Alright, hand is okay. Nothing crazy. Probably looking to block, Oasis. Set up my just send Titans for 4. Alright, starting off with the brand. We're gonna go ahead and leak a little bit of damage this turn, just kind of see what the rest of the turn kind of entails. I want to try to get max value out of these Clash cards, ideally. Ooh, a yellow fire and strike first. Okay, very interesting. So I think in this spot, I'm probably just going to give them... Also not Oasis this turn, which I think is also reasonable. Preserve some armor. Mildly compelling. Let's go ahead and go, I guess, with the Canopy Shelter then. I'm not actually sure I want to use the Oasis this turn. I think I'll just try to line up these two Clash cards, ideally on their 4 attacks. Alright, there's our first 4 attacks, so very good that we were able to line up one of these. For the second one, it's always a little bit more suspect finding the perfect timing. Alright, looks like they're going to just send in Phoenix Flame, which is also fine. Halfway tempted to give them Blade Beckoner, but I think leaking a little bit of damage for the Oasis is probably smart. I almost expect them to have like another Chain Ender here. That would make sense, the Lava Burst, why they kind of like just play the Snatch turn 1. Let's go ahead and just block with the Clash. And then we're sending 4 next turn, which should get them reasonably closer to death. So I imagine this probably buys armor, but the funny thing is there's not like a super efficient way to give all of their armor because they do have the Blade Beckoner helm here. So maybe they're just going to cash that in and try to save these Tiger equipment, I guess, for like a later turn, which I think is fair. But yeah, this matchup is like not as doomed as a lot of people think. Like a lot of the reason why it was a bad matchup in the last kind of like meta was just because like we're like main decking Staunch, right? And now we're not main decking Staunch, which I think is really good. That makes this matchup, I think, a little bit better. That being said, like Rise from the Ashes is maybe one of the best, I guess, use cases for Staunch in this matchup. But looks like they don't have the burn something. the new card from Compendium that like draws a card, discards a card, or discards the Phoenix Flame or whatever. But yeah, looks like we're probably just gonna try to commit to blocking here. I think we're gonna go ahead and just leak a little bit of damage and just kind of try to get closer to the Oasis life gain. We should have ample opportunity to kind of block out this turn, so I'm not too concerned. And they did just buy back the Phoenix Flame, which I think means that they're not activating Fi this turn, which is pretty good. What do we want to do next? I'm tempted to just throw the Gauntlet in front of this. Yeah, I think we will. Go ahead and just pitch our Summer's Fall. Kind of cash in that value. Here's comes the Rabble. It's like a little bit awkward here because I like equally want to block and also don't want to block. I think we're going to assume that they have follow-up damage after this, so I think we're going to try to just take the full 4 here, even though it's a little bit awkward. I guess they could like Searing Emberblade, and then we're like kind of sad. Maybe we should just kind of give up on the Oasis life gain here. Maybe it's like a little bit too greedy if they're like the rest of their hand is just like Arsenal Pass. I think that seems reasonable. Notably, they cannot buy here also, which means maybe we're honestly just sending this in for 9. I don't think that's actually that bad. Gets them a lot closer to lethal. They block 3 equipment. If you're gonna send like a kind of middling turn, then I don't think we actually need to like commit things to block. So let's maybe just go ahead and use the Blade Beckoner here. Biggest thing I'm worried about here is just like Arsenal Pass. Okay, they're just gonna follow up with Salt. Do we really care about Salt though? Not super convinced that we do. We could give double block here, but I'm kind of more inclined to just send 9. I think it's probably going to be the play. So let's maybe just cash in the shield a little bit. We'll leak 2, go to 10. That seems fair. Might go ahead and get that nice, sweet Might token. So they throw their equipment in front of this. They take 6. They go to 5, which is kind of like Titan's Fist range if we do find the enablers for like making the Might tokens and stuff. So they're maybe like 1 or 2 turns away from lethal here. That being said, if they want to just like fold their hand, giving us tempo, I think, is also very good for us because we get to like set up an arsenal. So feel definitely pretty good if you see a Fi start to block. Also need to probably find an opportunity to use these civic equipment at some point. I feel like I probably just haven't been paying attention. Maybe there was like a decent opportunity for it. All right, seems like you're gonna drop to 8, keep a 2-card hand. So imagining this is probably just like throw a head jab, set up Arsenal for next turn, which we should be able to punish with the disable here. And the nice thing about disable in particular is that they cannot block it just with their equipment. Okay, it seems like they're just going to throw the Display of Loyalty instead. Interesting spot to be in. I think since they're taking a mid-turn, we should probably also take a mid-turn. Like, disable's not really doing very much. Yeah, I think we're just going to cash in the block and then just send Titan's Fist, set up Flourish on Arsenal. Should be able to get Flourish value on a later turn. Like, we do have tons of Might generation in the deck, so should be possible. Especially when they're not setting up a 5-card hand. Alright, there's our equipment block. Means they get to cash this in for the 2 value, the extra resource, and the tiger. Alright, so maybe hoping to combo the fruits in the staunch here if we can find a good opportunity for that to line up. You need to be a little bit careful now. We're not going too low here, though. I think maybe the play is to start cashing in the Civic Duty here and then try to line this up on maybe kind of like one of the bigger chain links they're going to have here. There was also maybe an argument for Civic Steps, but we don't really fully know the rest of their hand yet, so I want to be a little bit careful about that. Okay, it seems like they're maybe just going to put the Phoenix Flame in the yard so that they have maybe a way to buy it back with Fi, which I think is reasonable. Yeah, I think I'm going to cash in the Civics up here because our hand does block fairly well. Like, even if they go, like, Snatch into, like, Chain Ender or something here, I don't think I'm too scared. Like, most likely we're just getting a head jab here, or, like, a weapon swing, so they would have had Go Again anyways. So that's pretty good. And then let's go ahead and block. I think just with our Clash card here. Want to hold ourselves open to just maybe sending the Thunderquake if we need to. My final card is Rising Resentment, which means they just get to follow up with Phoenix Flame afterwards. What do we want to do? So we could also make the Might and just try to crack back with the Flourish, which is reasonable. So that would be putting the Titan's Fist to, I think it's exactly 7, right? +2. So that would be like the minimum requirement to send 7. Or you can send Thunderquake and hold on to the Flourish. I guess those are the two main questions. I guess this preserves the most life total while also threatening a card out of hand. So this puts us to 6, and then we also get to maybe have like an opportunity to just kind of set up like a decent turn for the next turn. So I think this is maybe still the play. We have to be really careful with that bigger token though. We definitely could get pretty punished for that. I think I just don't want to give them like a second one here if I can kind of help it. Oh, and they're just going to set up to Phoenix Flame. Okay, that's interesting. So now we Flourish, send 7, and now their equipment does not block anymore. So this should demand a card from hand, which is excellent. Keeping Fi and Kayo and all these other kind of like aggro heroes off their 5-card hands is obviously kind of what you want to be doing. And now they're just in normal Titan's Fist range, which is great. Oh, and this is a pretty good hand. It's actually kind of funny that the 1 additional damage here actually just means that Summer's Fall doesn't really matter. It's still demanding a card regardless. I'm just kind of hoping that we don't get punished by that Vigor super bad. And we know that the Arsenal is Phoenix Flame, so like Arsenal is kind of just whatever at this point. And they don't have a backup as well. So I think we're kind of in okay shape. Truly a beautiful hand when you see 3 yellow Clash cards and no blue. Okay, unfortunately not doing very much against Brand here, but that's fine. I want to maybe just eat this, go to 5. We need to be a little careful that we're not eating too much damage, especially because they do have the 1 for 5 still available. They don't have any fealties yet, though. At least nice. Right, there's Phoenix Flame. So let's go and give them the Civics here, because I imagine we're probably not getting punished for it. There is actually probably a punish in the form of 1 for 5 into like 0 for 4, but I think we're that afraid of that. I'm just cashing the block here. Fortunately, these Clash cards are actually not lining up super well with their hand, unfortunately. Okay, there's our 0 for 4, perfect. So this is maybe looking like 0 for 4 into Searing, using our Vigor token plus the Crouching Tiger. That's at least what I'm guessing here. So this will just eat all our block cards, which is great. We will be leaking 2 from the Tiger unless we want to throw a piece of armor in front of it, which I think we probably want to do. So I'm going to give them maybe just the Steel Blade Buckler. Don't want to go too low because we do want to avoid getting out of like the Art of Dragonfire range. This will be Emerald Blade Swing into another Phoenix Flame, which is a pretty good turn. That being said, we're still stripping card next turn, which is great. So should be still in a decent spot. Just need to be careful that we're not leaking too much damage here. And I also want to just make sure we're not giving them a 4-card hand. Alright, looks like they're going to just pass the Phoenix Flame, which is fair. Here's Fire that burns within. That's the card I was thinking of. So Phoenix Flame, 3-card hand, no armor. We should be in a pretty good spot. So looking at block 3, 3, 4, and then maybe just pitch the finals here to put them into Titan's Fist range. I imagine there's not a ton that they could have here that's super, super scary. Right, go ahead and give them the Civic Duty here. Imagine the Vigor token's not going to matter at this point. Okay, they do get the Inflame the Firebrand, but we do have the cover for that, which is very nice. So lined up perfectly there. And now we get to Swing Fist, put them to basically 1 here and eat a card. Unless they have multiple 2 blocks, in which case we're eating multiple cards, which is also great. So we're not quite out of this yet, because Phoenix Flame is still definitely a scary threat, but I think once you start just eating multiple cards every turn, you're in a pretty good spot. Looks like the Lava Burst will be the card, which I think makes a fair bit of sense, given that they're probably going to struggle to go for Chain Links wide. Alright, another very good hand. So this will be the hand that eats 2 cards unless they somehow pressure over that. Unfortunately for the Rootbound, we also have a ton of Decompose here. So I imagine this is going to be a pretty backbreaking turn unless they do find like the Art of Dragon Fire or something like really, really good here. I guess they could go like a Fire 10 Strike Fist is probably not it, but we'll go ahead and respect it. Nice part is for Ember Blade, they do have to pitch an additional 1 here. Looks like what they're going to do nice and cleanly cover that with Rootbound. It looks like they also didn't really have the Draconic to give it go again, which is great. Now we kind of see the deck, I guess, start to fall apart just a little bit. Let's go ahead and just banish a non-earth just to have it for another Rootbound, which I think is still in the deck, right? Yeah, I think we still have another Rootbound live. So the Rootbounds second cycle are actually going to be quite nasty, but this should basically be game. At this point, we're taking 2 cards per turn, which is pretty brutal unless they have a 4 block, which we just haven't seen yet, but looks like they're just going to give us 2 blocks, which is also pretty backbreaking. Yeah, from this point, we basically just kind of get into like the Titan's Fist fatigue portion of the game. Okay, seems pretty good. And then we do have Oasis here, which could be interesting. They might not actually be on very many 1 costs at all. So we just need to make sure we're swinging Titan's Fist here. Yeah, the Oasis is definitely a little awkward. We can make it work. So I think the play is going to be just blocking here, and then maybe looking for Oasis on the next chain link. I forget if we know what their do they have their Phoenix Flame in Arsenal still? I believe they do. At least I'm not seeing it in the yard. So I think this is still Phoenix Flame. Which is kind of funny. So that will put us there. So we do probably just Oasis this. The one thing about the Phoenix Flame, though, is that will put us functionally into Art of Dragon Fire range. We still have not seen, so this is kind of still a scary spot. Yeah, if they have like the Art of Dragon Fire here and can keep the hand to cast it, I think we're actually kind of in danger. That being said, we might be playing around a card that does not exist in their deck, but it's a card I think a lot of, or most Phis I think run. At least most recent Phi lists that I've seen have been running it. Maybe they're cutting it for like the yellow Fire Titan Strike first, just for a little bit more consistency. I think is reasonable. We do also have to play around Nip at the Heels, which is a card we saw them pitch. Their deck is like Nip at the Heels. What else? What else have we seen? I think they have Assault the Wound still. They have another Burning Blade Dance, looks like. It was Yellow Fire Tenant. Those two make sense. Very interesting they're not running the Art of Dragon Fires. Or maybe we're now going to see the Art of Dragon Fire. That'd be also very funny. Yeah, if the last card is our Dragon Fire, we are in danger. Okay, fortunately it's not. We do have the Root Bound to play around. We do have the Root Bound to play around Snip at the heels. Interesting. I almost feel like we should staunch this. It still shouldn't be able to buy back Phoenix Swim here unless I'm missing something. Actually, let's just Root Bound. And maybe just save the staunch in case there's a big next thing. Might as well go for the decomp here. See if they go for anything else. Okay, they're going for the Ember Blade. They will put us to 1 here. It's pretty scary. Yep, so we're going to pay here. Oops. Do this. Pay the resources. Pretty close game. I think I at some point assumed that the Titan's Fist lock would start eating like it felt like their hands wouldn't be as functional through the Titan's Fist lock, but like it seems like they've actually been putting up like a really good fight through just having the repeated 4 damage. Maybe this matchup is still a little bit scary, but I think it's still like largely kind of okay for us. I don't know. What cards do they have left actually in their deck? It's the yellow. Yellow. It seems like they maybe have a bunch of 2-blocks at this point. Let's see what the rest of their deck here was. So they had the Yellow Fire Titan Strike first, the Salt the Wound, the Nip, and then the Snatch. Okay, which makes sense. So they're running Snatch, I guess this is their Chain Ender, then the Yeet Pot as well. So I guess this is maybe a way to like kind of contend with KO still, is like running the Snatch over the kind of 1-for-5 and being a little bit more streamlined. I can kind of see the vision here. I still think that our Dragonfire is just like a very, very powerful effect. Like I think if they had it at any point that game, like just getting in that extra chip into like fatigue is very, very valuable. But overall, I think this matchup's still like pretty, like definitely very, very doable still. Like especially if you're not like main decking the staunch like we were. But yeah, the kind of like new improvements to the deck, like having Root Bound. I think both the Root Bounds this game were actually like live for 0-4, which is also kind of nuts. But anyways, pretty good showing. I think maybe definitely some improvements you can also make for this matchup, but I don't expect this matchup to be super prevalent while KO is kind of still around. All right, let's see if we can get a couple more. All right, playing against a Flarvo. So this is kind of an interesting matchup. I wanted to try a couple different things in this matchup. Let's go ahead and cut the Somersaults because I don't think they're super useful. Bring in the Oasis, and then we're also cutting some number of Clash cards. Like maybe, I think the Clash of Chest is like kind of our weakest one. I guess we can bring in like 1 here. All right, give them a good luck, have fun. I still debate between Sledge and Titan's Fist and Buckler, but I actually kind of want to do some Sledge gaming here, especially since we opened the Gold Foil Sledge. Can't have a video without Sledge, so I'm gonna actually try in this matchup. But I think this is still probably like a little shield matchup. But I want to do some experimentation. I think makes sense. Okay, looks like they are running a pretty strong Fridge here. All right, it looks like there may be, so this is probably likely a red Clash card to set up an Arsenal. So in this case, what do we want to do? I try to go for the Clash of Heads here if we want. Oh, they're also on Sledge. Okay, actually, that changes the matchup pretty significantly, I think. So if that's the case, I think we're just full staunching this. So I guess I'm glad I brought in our Sledge if they're going to bring in their Sledge. Normally they're not on Sledge in this matchup, which kind of makes it a bit interesting. Okay, and then we have our Sledge to start off the turn, so a little bit early for Root Bound. I think I'm kind of leaning towards maybe just pitching it away to kind of try to second cycle it. Get to do our Summer's Fall, maybe eat some armor here. I think they'll give us the Chokeslam here. So normally, okay, so why you don't really expect to see Flarvo with Sledge in this matchup is because like their hero about power is like already stupid good, right? Like most of the time they just want to be activating their hero power as like often as possible, which is like what makes this matchup like sometimes a little challenging. Let's go ahead and Clash of Shields here, which I guess is basically free. And then we can follow up with Oasis, make a Might. Don't need to use the gauntlets just yet. Ooh, and we win the Clash, which is also very, very good. But we should definitely be looking to use like for opportunities to use armor this game. I think using armor early is definitely good. So I think next turn I'm gonna try my best to find a spot for it. Let's go ahead and just try to send efficient damage here. Like I can definitely out fatigue them from any point this game. So like throwing the extra damage over just keeping the card in deck, I think is a little bit more valuable. So we got a nice little life lead. That being said, it can disappear at any point against Flarvo. Alright, Debilitate's definitely annoying, so we probably would like to block this. Do I don't really want to give them a Quicken. No, that's definitely wrong. Let's give them Clash of Heads, Ironhide Gauntlets, and maybe even the Civic Duty. There's not really a ton that they can do with Civic Duty. I think this Debilitate is like annoying enough of an on-hit that I think this is probably fine. Go ahead and pay 1. Let's try to get a Might. Want a Might now, or do we want a Might in the future? I think a Might. I think a Might now, I guess. Oh, and we win the Clash, which is also really good. So we're doing already a bang up job on the Clash winning, at least. So we get to race the Sledge. They are off an Arsenal here, which is really, really good. So that is definitely something that's definitely in our favor. Clash of Shields, Clash of Chess. We're at a higher life total, so the Finals is not super relevant. Need to find our bigger reacts here. We've only seen the one blue staunch, which I guess was turn 1. Let's go ahead and just send in like this. We could also cash in the Blade Beckoner, which I don't think is unreasonable. Does it let us do anything extra though? It lets us like set up the Fyendals and Arsenal, which is like maybe interesting. Let's go ahead and actually try that, I think. Let's go ahead and Clash of Shields. So we unfortunately lose that one, but that's fine. We're gonna set the Fyendals and Arsenal, send Sledge for 6 here. And we're already doing a pretty good job, at least on the fatigue front. We do just need to be careful about the Dominate. It looks like they got a nice little Might token there as well. So definitely not out of the woods here yet. Oh yeah, Boulder Drop is definitely a good one. But Turn should deal with most of that, I believe. We go to 10, so we take 2 over. And then we can just send in the Fyendals from Arsenal. It's kind of interesting here because I actually want to go a little bit lower for the Fyendals, but maybe we just don't have that luxury. Yeah, I think the Turn Timber should suffice here. Infuse that. So unfortunately, dropping to 14, which means our Fyendals won't be live, but still a 3 for 5, which is good enough. We can hopefully try to draw towards our red staunches, our blue staunches, and then maybe try to set an arsenal here. Ooh, Test of Strength gives us a gold, which is pretty nice as well. Denies their Mercallier Helm, which is pretty sweet. Alright, they do have Pummel Index, so that's good info. But we do want to make sure that we are trying to Sledge as often as possible here. Definitely tempted to give up Civic Duty, but I don't think there's any real necessity. Let's go ahead and take a little bit of damage. Try to just hit them with a Renounce this turn. We're still pretty far ahead on... I guess we're not, like, super far ahead on Fatigue, but, like, we're ahead on Fatigue based on what our deck is. I don't imagine they're probably also on Staunch. Right, so we win another gold, which is very funny. So that Mercallier Helm is probably dead at this point. It's kind of hilarious. It seems like they're just going to go for the Debilitate here. Yeah, let's go ahead and just maybe... We can actually probably use the gold next turn. That's kind of funny. Yeah, let's go ahead and just block 6 here. And then maybe look to filter the gold so we can maybe like throw up fruits or something. I think that seems pretty compelling. So yeah, Canopy Shelter. We can actually filter 1 more if we want to try to hit another blue. Maybe a little bit greedy, but it lets us like make an additional might, which is pretty good. So yeah, we're cooking here. Gold definitely very funny. Like giving us civics here. It's me looking to set up like a big pummel play. But we get the fruits, which is great. Yeah, made pretty good use of the gold, and now we also have the might for next turn. Right, Scar, definitely mildly annoying, but probably fine. We want to ideally try to keep a card for, what do you call it? Keep a card for just sending Sledge next turn off the 1, because I imagine they're going to try to pressure our Quicken token. The question is, can we afford to give Civics? I don't think we can just yet. It's unfortunate. Or maybe we can? Sledge. No, it's probably still too risky, right? If they have 3 blues in their hand, they basically just like blow us out really bad. So I don't think we can afford to do that. Let's go ahead and just root bound this. If they have another Scar, it could be a little bit annoying. But we'll go ahead and just decomp this and then throw, I guess, another Find Alls in the bin. Funny thing is, if they have another Find Alls, we can actually give the Civic Steps on it. So I mean, that's not actually that big of a concern. Right, there's the Boulder Drop, which we can pretty cleanly cover with the Staunch here. Fortunately, there's no real way to punish the Quicken here, I think. So we'll go ahead and just make another Might token. Yeah, we chewed through most of their armor, which is also quite nice. So get to send in a nice little Sledge for 8 here. Unfortunately, not getting much use out of the second swing, but that's okay. Sledge for 8 still pretty good. It looks like they're going to just give us another bigger token, which is great for us. So you have to be careful still about their pummels, which we do know are in the deck. And yeah, this seems like just a good opportunity to just throw the Clash in front of this. These cards are kind of interesting in this matchup. I mean, 0 for 4, definitely pretty solid. Always pretty solid, I guess. So this is pummel. Means we can probably just give them Find Alls here. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any world where you can keep any number of cards here, but that's fine. I mean, it's face up pummel, so not the end of the world. Go ahead and just give them the 2 block. And then this will force them to probably use it, which means the Staunch gets nice clean coverage. Then we're also opening ourselves up to punishing them super bad with the Quicken token here. Because this does persist between turns. It doesn't pop quite like a Vigor token. And we got a nice little life lead, so feeling pretty comfortable in this spot unless they have like back-to-back pummels, which I think we saw one pitched relatively like middle of the game, so I don't think they should have it. All right, fault line for 9 is basically do nothing. This is not pummeled. So I think now is the opportunity to just cash in the Civics. Is it though? You don't have to cash in the Civics. No, we don't. We don't have to give Civics here. Now we just punish them with the double Sledge here. That should basically be game because we basically have tempo, I think, for the rest of the game. So that was their pitch deck, actually. So we should actually be coming up on the pummel relatively soon here. But yeah, double Sledge is always pretty funny. And they should maybe have like a 2-card play here, I'm imagining, if they're trying to take some damage to keep it. So let's go ahead and I'm going to give them here. Probably just the root bound. Do we have enough decomp? Oh, we do not. Okay, that's kind of interesting. So I guess we have to go to 1-ish here, or we could also give the Civic Steps because they're probably never going to make good use out of them. Yeah, I think Civics are fine here. Should be relatively safe. The best play they can probably make is just like trying to set an arsenal and just like take the Sledge, or like just throw 3 cards in front of the Sledge. I think if they did maybe end up getting that 1 extra point of value out of the Merc Helm, maybe they would have been in a better spot. So maybe we did just get a little bit lucky this game. All right, so now we get to throw, I guess, one of the Glacials here. Shouldn't really matter. Sending Glacial for 9 should deny the Dominate. See what they got. Alright, giving us a good game. So yeah, it looks like maybe they just weren't ever able to get that second pummel out, which is really good. So I think it's a pretty interesting Flarvo deck. I definitely think there's some unique kind of equipment choices with like the Merkeller helm, and then the also I feel like the gauntlets I don't see a lot of. Like I normally see like the Civic set, just like full Civic set for Flarvo, but I think this is definitely maybe like a more interesting build. I wonder what the scars are for. Like maybe just a decent value card, which I can kind of see. You have like a lot of fridge to kind of like make use of it. So I think that's kind of fair. Definitely like for the most part, pretty stock standard. Nothing's too surprising here. Let's take a look at I guess the deck. So two unmovables as well. Okay, yeah, pretty solid looking Flavo list. All right, let's see if we can maybe just get one last game here. Finish it off on one more KO. So let's try going second this time. I feel like I don't feel super strongly about that. Like, so the argument for going first is that you get a bunch of cards out of them without them. Let's actually maybe try cutting the Somersault. They didn't seem like super impactful that last game. Maybe do like one Oasis instead, just to make use out of our kind of gauntlet a little bit better. Let's try to make something like this. I'm not super sold on the Somersaults in this matchup. I can actually probably see those being humbles kind of in retrospect now. Okay, so it looks like they got a pretty good start here. Let's go ahead and just cash in the Might token. And we might as well just throw the fruits in front of this. They could be leaking a decent bit of damage just because we kind of drew all of our 2 blocks here, but it'll be fine. They are leaking damage, so they're not setting an arsenal, which is probably good for us. I guess we can get around the Intimidate here, which is, I guess, a little bit funny. Alright, so taking 4 on the opening turn is a little feels bad, but they're not setting up an arsenal, so maybe that's about kind of expected. We do need to be a little bit careful about the pack hunts this game. Um, Interesting hands. We could go off the staunch, which feels a little bit rough, but might be correct to just send 9. I mean, this is a matchup where we do have to kind of be sending damage. We can't just afford to kind of like sit back. I think the alternative play was we could have gone for like Summers for 5 and then set staunch and arsenal. But we're not making like a mic token, so I think I like getting like the immediate 4 value here. If they're cashing in the armor, that's also I think pretty good for us. Yeah, this game is really all about like 5 card hands. Really, like how many are they able to kind of successfully set up here? Oh, we do have a Rootbound live already, which is great. Fantastic. So I believe okay, so because they have the predatory plating, unfortunately Civics is still potentially punishable here. You have to be a little bit careful. Let's go ahead and maybe just throw the Flourish in front of this and then see what the follow-up is. Again, if it's just like 2 card 8 or whatever, then we can just throw these in front of it. If it's not 2 card 8, it's just like Claw, then we block here, set up the root bounds. Alright, seems like they're gonna pop their plating. What does the plating mean? Maybe we're overdue for like a wild ride here into Claw. Okay. Okay, not wild ride into Claw, just wild ride. So that's pretty good for us actually. Let's go ahead and maybe just soak up a little bit of damage here with the Autumn's Touch. We could also just try to convert that offensively. Reasonable. Hmm. Kind of an interesting spot. I actually kind of also want to just send Titan's Fist off the Autumns here. Maybe let's play a little bit passively. I'm just gonna see what they end up doing. Again, no Arsenal setup is pretty good because it means we get to just kind of sit on this root bound. I've been kind of actually surprised over this kind of recording session by how good Rootbound is. Like, even if we're not like wanting to actually put cards in the graveyard, it feels like we just end up fueling the graveyard a lot, anyways. Oh, I think we even have enough for double Rootbound, which is kind of crazy. Maybe we just like found our Earth card super early, which is also definitely possible. So here, I do not believe they can punish us for the civic steps anymore. I think let's actually kind of go ahead and just try to cash those in. The reason they can't punish us for civics, by the way, let me explain in a second. So they have Mandible Claw, which is already live. So if they send Mandible Claw, it doesn't work. And if they have like another blue plus like a 2 cost, then they're still like sending Claw at the end of it. So this Quicken token, if they choose to just like not send Claw or anything, is basically kind of eating 3 value, kind of. So like they kind of have to pop it. But looks like it's just going to go on a Strongest Survive, which I think is also reasonable. Let's go ahead and just give him the other rebound. Then we can set Oasis and Arsenal and probably get the full value, which is great. No need to decompose here. That being said, there's no reason, I guess, not to, but there's no reason to, I guess, as well. All right, let's go ahead and just send in Fist here. And they're going to cash in their last. I guess they still have 1 more point of armor, but the life totals have evened out just a little bit here. Ooh, Renounce is probably one of our better cards in the deck against KO, so that is very welcome to see. So my hope for this turn is that they're just going to Mason like 2 cost no go again into something. We get to cash in the full value out of our Oasis. They maybe make a Might token or something. One thing that could get scary, I guess, is the Beaten Trackers, which it looks like they're maybe considering here. Yep, so it looks like you're going to pop those. You have to be a little bit careful now. I think this is actually probably the opportunity to pop the Civics steps here. So let's go ahead and do that, and then blocking 3 currently. Maybe have an opportunity to use Fiendals at some point again this turn. Yeah, I think I like this pitching the Flourish here. That. Could also find maybe an opportunity for. Maybe we just want to block with the Canopy over the Finals. It kind of depends on a little bit on what they want to do. I believe they shouldn't have the punish for the Quicken unless they have like the Savage Feast. I guess that could punish. We do have to be, I guess, a little cautious about Savage Feast, but I'm kind of just hoping they don't have it here, maybe. Although, is that a punish, though? They go 1, 2... I don't think that is really a punish. Alright, so question here is between the defensive value of the Fiendals and the Canopy. I guess one argument is Canopy is always good later. And like the extra point on... Does the extra point on Renounce actually matter? Hold on, let's think about that. They have 1 point of armor. This is crushing for... They have to block 5, so I don't think it does, right? So I guess we should take the defensive value. And maybe even just throw... Maybe just throw the Buckler in front of it too, because why not? Cash in a little bit of that kind of life total. Maybe are looking for a spot to use Civic Duty at some point this game. Oh, they're gonna pop the... Oh no. Are you ever supposed to pop Knucklehead in this matchup? I think the answer's kind of no, right? Okay, that has like completely ruined their game plan. So now I guess we just send Titan's Fist, right? And then we can just keep this in Arsenal, do block whatever they do next turn, and we don't really care. Yeah, I guess we're just sitting on Renounce now. Wow, that Knucklehead was actually kind of brutal for them. I think on average it's supposed to be brutal, right? Like you're only really happy with the 5 and a 6, and everything below is basically status quo or worse. I guess maybe they wanted to like take a gamble or something, but that seems kind of crazy to me. So go ahead and block with the Turn Timber here. Would make us leak 1, which is probably fine. I mean, set up the blue staunch in Arsenal. It should be fine enough. KO does actually have a lot of fives, surprisingly. It can definitely be pretty relevant. This Renounce, if it's crushing, is getting roughly 9 value. So very, very good. Feel pretty good in this spot. That being said, there are always, those super high roll KO draws they can hit where it's like pulping into something. But we do actually have like the pulping kind of counter, I guess. That's pretty good. All right, pretty good hands. Good enough hand, I guess. It's not like amazing, but it's fine. Titan's Fist will still be stripping cards next turn. Then maybe just cash in the Civic Duty. Seems like a decent enough breakpoint, and I kind of want to push the advantage here. All right, looks like they're just going to follow up with an 8, so we can go ahead and just throw some more slop in front of that. Very good. And this is now Titan's Fist lock, so whittle them down. KO normally doesn't actually have a ton of 2 blocks other than like the Buckwild, so most of the time they are blocking 3 on this, which means they're not getting closer to 1, which is a little bit more premium. So this staunch actually does hurt a little bit, but that being said, stripping a card is still very, very good here. Okay, and then now this is actually a perfect kind of lineup for our blue staunch here, which is great. So we'll see what they can kind of string together here, but I think we're looking pretty good. Get to send a nice juicy Renounce, which should be stripping two if not 3 cards, I believe. That's really good. And then we'll go ahead and block, I guess, with Underquake here, although I don't think it matters too much. Trying to think if there's a reason to give any additional armor here. I don't think it's like we're not in pulping range, so I don't think that's super relevant. And now these Renounces are going to start to be pretty backbreaking here, I think. So looking like we're in a pretty good spot. Again, anything can happen, it's KO, but like if they're losing 3 cards here, I imagine they're going to have a pretty bad time. Go. All right, Wild Ride coming in, so let's go ahead and just keep blocking pressure up. I might even just Arsenal this Disable. It depends what they got. But yeah, I think we're pretty in a pretty comfortable spot here. If they did have the blue there, they actually would have been able to send. Or no, they still wouldn't be able to send Mineral Claw, right? Oh, they had the Vigor. That's why. So yeah, they would have actually, if they did have the blue, send a little bit of extra damage. Let's go in Arsenal Disable. It's not like super good, but it might be relevant. And we're pretty close on cards at this point. But we do obviously have the life advantage, which is always great. I think we're still chilling here. It's last pulping. I believe it's last pulping, right? Yeah, there's the other pulping. I'm not really afraid of anything here. And we just kind of comfortably block this claw. Yeah, KO really not that much different from pre-pen, like, or sorry, not from pre-pen, but not that much different from, I guess, just pre-ban. Like, we're basically kind of just playing the same deck, and they're playing the same deck, so it's like I kind of was comfortable with this matchup before. Like, they do need to line up these really huge kind of Savage Feast turns to really kind of get over you, and if they're not doing that, like, you're very, very comfortable for most of the game. And Smash Hitting Staunch is whatever, not the end of the world. Does mean we're not sending Disable. I mean, that was actually probably the best hit, right? But not the end of the world. I mean, we're still kind of chilling here. Still strip at least 1 card here and make a Might on the back. Hitting the Staunch actually meant that, like, we didn't get to play the Disable, which is kind of unfortunate. So that Smash Instinct was actually, like, super high value. That's kind of crazy. That's probably, like, a 10 value Smash Instinct. Or something. Maybe, like, more than that. It's probably like 11 value because we lost like 4 functionally. Kind of nutty. But we're still doing really fine on cards here, so I'm not too worried. Right, just giving us one card here. Trying to think what they have left. We've seen 2 Pack Hunts, 2 Smash Instincts, so I imagine there's not really a ton of gas left in the tank on their end. That being said, this is one of those hands that could be a little bit suspect with the 2 blocks, but we still have some armor to work with, so we should be fine. A little scary, but should be fine. We can maybe even just potentially block out from here, depending on what they kind of have left over there. Go ahead and give them 5 here, and then maybe give them another 3, send 5 ourselves. I think we're in okay shape here. Yeah, no real reason to block, but no real reason not to. And this takes 2 cards, which is great, and then should be able to close out the game from there. Right, there we go. All right, let's go ahead and give them. We'll pitch the Vyandals here, although it doesn't really matter. I think this should basically just be game because they just have a yellow bear things left after this, assuming the other 2 cards block, which they might not. So yeah, this is kind of just the meat grinder at this point. But yeah, matchup's still not bad. Again, if you have a not bad matchup in the KO, you're doing pretty well right now, honestly. Okay, they did look like they were able to survive that last turn, but shouldn't be surviving much longer, hopefully. All right, this should now be game. But yeah, pretty good one. Again, I think this matchup basically did not change between the ban lists. So, and in fact, it may even got better for us because we got the root bound. So actually, maybe it's even better in our favor. Although root bound, I don't think really like matters all that much in this matchup. But it does like decompose for 4 regularly, which is like definitely a pretty big upside, I would say. But anyways, pretty good game. Let's go ahead and do kind of a little bit of recap. All right, so this was basically just my testing for kind of like a post-ban Terra. Again, we kind of did gain Rootbound, which I think this card is like surprisingly good, despite not wanting to put a bunch of Earth cards in our graveyard. Like typically we want to be pitching, but like you kind of just instantly get a lot of Earth cards in your graveyard anyways, especially with like the yellow autumns and like the blue autumns and stuff like that. Like cards you actually like want to be blocking with. I think there's definitely some room for improvement here. Like, I'm not convinced the Summers Falls are actually super needed right now, especially with like Florian not really like I don't think we can actually make that matchup super good unless we want to like overtech for it. And I don't think that deck is like all that good in the KO. And like I guess Enigma is also kind of around, but that deck also kind of loses to KO. So it's like kind of funny that KO is kind of keeping down some of our kind of like natural predators, which is very, very funny. But yeah, this is kind of like where I'm at least for a post-ban list. I think that there's definitely some experimentation with this Summer's Fall slot. Like you can maybe turn this into something else, maybe turn the Yellow Autumn's Touch into something else. But like after the ban list, I think like despite losing Sirens, we're losing a lot of our worst matchups, which is like a really good spot to be in. So anyways, feeling pretty comfortable about this deck, and I think this deck is still in a pretty good spot. I think there's also some funny memeing you can kind of do with this deck. Like I was trying to play around with a funny like Sledge build with like lead with heart, as well as what was the other card? Slap Happy as well. To try to just make a bunch of bigger tokens and do like mono Sledge stuff. I couldn't quite get it to work, mainly because I think you just like sack the Dromai matchup and like the Gravy matchup, but like is what it is. I think that is like a funny deck you can run, although I don't think it's like maybe necessarily good. So yeah, maybe like cards I'm kind of looking at over the Summers Falls, or maybe just like the Humbles or something like that. You could also run just like some other value cards, like maybe Crash Down the Gates or Fault Line or whatever. But definitely a lot of experimentation that I think we had. Lots of really good cards right now. So I think our KO matchup's still really, really good with this deck. I think it's maybe even gotten better, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. And a special thank you to all the folks who decided it would be a good idea to give us $2 on Patreon. We really appreciate the support, but it's obviously never required.